Randy, we've got a problem.
What?
They go.
Reality's here. He's trying to crash the party. Reality? Who let him in?
You're sad that people are mean? Well, I'm sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda. Like, I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Real News. It's been a couple day break, but we are back at it, and I do mean we. There's three of us this morning coming into your screen like this. I missed y'all. Have you missed us? John and I have been doing some legit behind the scenes work. We've been making moves. We've been, cashing checks, snapping necks, doing all the things that we do. We have some
That is not what we've been doing at all. Don't listen to him. He's crazy.
That's not what we've been doing. We've been working on some political stuff, man. Figuratively, that's right. Hey, man, it's Real News, episode 93, 7 away from the 100 mark. We're back at it again. Love y'all. Miss y'all in all sincerity. How's everybody been doing out there? Man, let's start it right now. Greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment. How you doing? What you been up to? What have you been struggling with? Prayer records, concerns, prayer requests, some some encouragement, some enlightenment you got going on. What are you studying?
Any prayer records?
You got any prayer records? Some prayer records. Hey, I got a prayer request actually for our buddy Phil. I believe as of right now, if not within the next couple hours, he'll be going in for cancer surgery. The guy has a fantastic attitude about everything, but he's a Real News family member, and I just want to keep him some prayer requests out there for him as he goes through that this morning. Just all the things, great physician being what it is, miraculous healing, and also some unburdened feelings for his family. Just take that burden off them, let them have sort of peace and tranquility about the entirety of all of it. So pray that for Phil, if you will. We got the unified chat going over here. Anything you comment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, doesn't matter. We will be there responding to your requests. I got some updates about the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act. We got some stuff to go over with the primary results last night. There was some wins, some losses, and a couple surprises for I think a lot of people out there. Before we jump into all that, though, my name is Mr. Henry. Let's kick it to David Shine Thompson. He'll then introduce our guest, Zig, on the line. Shine, buddy, how you doing out East Tennessee way, man?
I'm doing very well. I hope everyone has a great weekend. My camera won't turn on, so there's that. All right, whatever. But I hope everybody, there we go. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I know we got a great show planned. I hope everybody got a chance to get out and vote yesterday. I know I did, and it was awesome. I didn't know that we weren't using voting machines in Tennessee until yesterday. I had to use a paper ballot and fill it in and stuff like that. I don't know if you did that over there in Middle Tennessee, Grant. But it was an interesting experience. Everyone, I got to keep my pin. They're like, don't leave that pin here. They're like, keep that pin, for filling in or whatever. And also we have a great episode of The Veteran Next Door coming up today. It's the anniversary. I don't know what the anniversary is. I think it happened in 1948, but it's the anniversary of the Battle of Athens. It's one of the only times that the people of America have ever risen up against even like a local government and won ever. Down in Athens, Tennessee, in McMinn County in 1948, returning World War II veterans rose up against their county government because they were fixing elections. They were trying to keep African Americans from voting. And they ended up surrounding the sheriff's office with the mayor inside and ended up demanding terms and reforming county government down in McMinn County, and getting rid of the mayors and stuff like that and making people being able to vote again and stuff. It's a really cool story. I actually have audio from like gunfights that were happening the night of the election night in the show from an old radio station that used to be on Gay Street here in Knoxville, who was down covering the election in 1948. So you want to check that out. It comes on at noon today on Real News. It's the Veteran Next Door, the anniversary of the Battle of Athens. But anyway, with that, I'd like to introduce our I guess he's a guest. He's kind of like our semi-regular third co-host, Mr. Zig Reichenbach. Whatever.
Hey.
Zig's on the line. What up, Zig?
Yeah. How's it going, man? Yeah.
Living the dream.
Bro. I guess this marks my debut as a semi-regular. I guess I'm a semi-regular now.
You always knew it,
I'm
Zig.
a semi-regular philosopher. Who would think that that's real?
A Real News regular contributor, Zig.
Hey, Zig, real quick, by the way, for those that may just be tuning in for the first time, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, any of the number of platforms that we're streaming on, if you caught us from Minds, if you're catching us from Parler, any of that stuff out there, by the way, the unified chat is up, so we'll be able to see where your comments are coming from. realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live, central landing page, where to find all that stuff. For those that may be seeing you for the first time, Zig, tell them a little bit about yourself, what you do up in Pennsylvania, that type of stuff.
Yeah, do a similar day job as you, engaging people at the community level. Shortly, I hope to start a platform for people in the grassroots. I have some exciting articles on the way. One I'm excited about is, who is the greater grassroots candidate, Kanye West or Joe Biden?
These are important questions.
These are important questions, man. That's awesome.
Well, I mean, I think then that's something then that people who are perhaps more left-leaning ought to consider. Who is the true voice of the grassroots? Is it Joe Biden, who has a lot of Bernie Sanders support behind him? Or is it somebody who was a former college dropout, now turned successful rap star?
That's honestly, it's the way you pitch
that
that.
people ought to consider.
That's legit, man.
And now the head of his own church too. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Well, when people consider representation, if they want somebody who's more like them, well, I think it could be the case that this other gentleman, this rap star, is perhaps more representative of the actual grassroots and where people are now. So I'll write the article, and the people can decide. All right.
Hey, with that being said, let's move into some of the local stuff here so we can get back in some of the national stuff here in just a second. So, quick update on where we're standing with the Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act. All right. So, everybody knows the way that these referendums, these petitions work in the Nashville area and several other areas. You need to gain the number of signatures you need. As we get an update here, the number of signatures you need is equal to 10% of the total vote during the primary period within Davidson County here, right? So we've been trying to go back and forth on what that number was going to be. We were receiving indications that it was going to be a very high number, and as it came through yesterday, it looks like that number was nowhere near as high as what we once thought it was. What that means is the number of signatures that we would then be required to obtain is not nearly as high as it was previously, or what we thought it was going to be. Does that make sense? And without divulging too much of the entire strategy of what's going on here, suffice that to say, we're right where we need to be. Not only are we well within mark here, we have until September 14th to finalize the number of signatures here. And again, we could be totally fine going forward right now if we wanted to, but we want to smash this number out. We want to get things over. So again, I just bring that up to thank each and every one of you that's been helping us do some of this stuff. We are smashing these numbers out there. We are going to get this thing on the ballot. It is going to be there on December 5th for everyone to go vote to get rid of this 34% property tax increase and do a myriad of other things as well. We had people out there yesterday knocking doors. We were at the voting locations. We even had our buddy Eric out there show up to the Joe Jorgensen event, trying to garner up some support and just let people know all the libertarians there. Speaking of the Joe Jorgensen event, another local update here. Jorgensen pulled out about 300 people yesterday at that event, or so I saw. She had an event in Centennial Park out there in the Nashville area, near downtown area, I believe. Fantastic showing out there, especially when you think about what Zig just said of the number of individuals that have shown up to a Joe Biden, or possibly lack thereof, shown up to a Joe Biden event recently. 300 folks for a Jorgensen event is a massive, major show out. So good stuff there. Let me just dive straight headlong into the topic du jour. And we
know why the people are here. We know why. We know what song they came to hear.
And this is where some of these headlines right here come from Tennessee in 2020 Tennessee statewide race election results. Look, I'm not going to pretend like I know what's going on here. I am going to be fully aware, full open book of this. I do know a few of the inside baseball stories here, but I'm going to rely upon the comments from YouTube, Facebook to let me know about how y'all feel about some of these races. Because there was a few that surprised me to the extent that I'm sure some of y'all are thinking, well, that's not surprising. By the way, here's some of the comments just to catch us up. Billy said in Facebook, he said, this will be a good one. I'm happy with the results. Kelly just said, hey there, fellas, I'm back. Florida is absolutely the worst. She's so glad to be back in East Tennessee and living here. We're lucky.
I feel
to
like
have
that
Kelly.
every time I go to Florida. Like I used to live there, grew up there. And so like I go visit thinking it'll be like childhood, but it's like that Walt Whitman quote, like you can never go home, you know? And every time I'm like, just get me back to the mountains. Get me back to the green grass and green trees. Instead of all that sagebrush.
Keep Kelly's family in y'all's prayers too. She was down there due to a family member that was lost. I believe her grandmother, who's kind of the matriarch of the family, and I'm sure they're still struggling with some harsh feelings, some raw feelings around that too. So keep her in the family. In your prayers. But we're happy to have you back, Kelly. Let's get into this right now. Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're watching, leave these comment section. Let me know how you feel about this. First one, let's just start it off. Tennesseans throw me in my face. Bill Haggerty smashing it out of the park, as I'm sure you're going to read the headlines are today, but that's not exactly the whole story, is it? Here's how it broke down with 99% of the precincts reporting. So it's the Tennessean says to me right now, with 330,000 and change number of votes, that's 50.8% of the votes. Bill Haggerty won that primary. And let's be completely honest about this. In that seat, both senators in Tennessee for real, but especially in that seat, it doesn't matter who the Democrat won. It just doesn't. It doesn't. Bill Haggerty is now, for all intents and purposes, the next senator for the state of Tennessee. Now, you're going to look at headlines right now, or probably over the next day or two, indicating that it was a landslide victory for Bill Haggerty. And I don't know, I would caution
10 points is pretty good.
It is.
It's pretty good. And in the raw numbers, it was like, what was it? Here, let me pull that back up. Raw numbers, not quite 100,000 votes. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. But I'll say this. In the grand scheme of things, granted, there was 10 people running this race, but the grand scheme of things, 50% of the people in Tennessee that are voting, you basically just got like half. I'll put it this way. A skeptic can look at this, or a septic tank could look at this. A skeptic could look at this and say about half the people in the state didn't want you to be their senator. At least half of the voting Republican population didn't want you to be their senator. That's one way to look at it. And I know that's a skeptical way to look at it, but at the same time, I'm just saying, man, it's not exactly the landslide that it's going to be portrayed as. He absolutely won by 50% of the vote. He absolutely garnered almost 100,000 more votes. Call it, whatever it is, but almost 100,000 more votes than the next closest guy, Manny. But 50.8%, just a different way to look at it is all I'm saying. But again, congratulations to Mr. Haggerty. I'm currently Ambassador Haggerty, and if I am a betting man, I'm going to put money on that and say your next senator of Tennessee, Bill Haggerty, is about to be, right? Scrolling down here. All right, man, somebody help me with this one. Shine, somebody else out there in their District 1 area. Dude, District 1 for U.S. House. Okay. When this was coming down, I was pretty sure Rusty Crowe and Timothy Hill it was going to be a neck and neck between them. The numbers, the polling that I was looking at was saying that Hill kind of had this thing wrapped up. The people I was talking to saying that I had this thing wrapped up. And I feel terrible for not following this race more, because I honestly don't even know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, yet let alone much about this candidate. I know that's terrible to say, but Diane Harshberger won 19.2% of the vote, 18,000 total votes there. She won that primary. She won that primary, man. That's an incredible, incredible thing. Congratulations to you. Again, I don't know much about that. I'm just super surprised. And I guess that's really my only analysis on that race is anybody else super surprised by that U.S. House District number 1? Timothy Hill, Rusty Crowe, those are the two to watch. And Diana coming out of, I don't know, possibly nowhere. I don't know.
Well, look at those numbers. 18,000, 15,000, 15. I can't. I met Josh Gapp. I can't believe he's a really nice guy. I saw him having ads towards the end. I can't believe that's really spread out. And as far look, 19, 16, 16, 14 on the percentages, It looks like Diana just knocked on more doors or made more phone calls. You know what I'm saying?
Just pounded it out more,
yeah,
right?
because, I mean, that was I'm sure, I mean, that's so spread out.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, you just don't see that in modern elections. Just so y'all know, this is not normal. To have, I mean, look at that, 2 people with 15,000 votes, and then 2 more with over 10,000, but 18,000 people isn't a whole lot of people. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In a U.S. House district, someone just outworked other people. That's what it comes down to.
And I've been telling people as we've been working these polling locations. Yes, and I've been telling people as we've been working these polling locations for this Nashville Taxpayer Protection Act, one more plug here, to get rid of the 34% property tax increase in Nashville. Number 4, goodgovernment.com. Number 4, goodgovernment.com. Visit that site. If you're a registered voter in Davidson County, sign the petition, send it back to us. Moving forward, I've been telling people as they come to the polls, Tennessee is has the second lowest voter turnout in the entire nation. Out of any state in the nation, we're the second lowest. Thanks to Louisiana, I think it's the only other state that's worse than us. But for Tennesseans, those that do participate know exactly what they are participating in. They are well informed. They are researched. They look thoroughly into every single candidate, at least as many candidates as they can. They show up to these stump speeches. They ask questions. They ask their own little Piccadilly questions. You know what I'm saying? They know what they're talking about. And it's exactly what Shine just said. If you're out there pounding pavement, knocking doors, getting your face in front of the people, a lot of times that's all it takes. I remember
you got to go to every Shoney's. You got to go to every Shoney's and meet with the people who eat at Shoney's. At least that's what the Knox County people have to do. That's what you just get. You got to go to all of them. You got to go to the one South Knoxville, Broadway, and the one out west. You got to do
some rubber eggs, man. Get you some rubber eggs at every Shoney's.
You got to talk to those people who meet there on Friday mornings, you know. You got to do that stuff, though. You just got to. If you want to win in East Tennessee, is what you got to do.
Congressman Burgett made a comment to me off air one time saying, hey, some of these candidates here that just keep winning, especially in East Tennessee, the only way you beat them is by breaking their legs. And what he meant was exactly that. If they stop getting out there pounding the pavement, they will lose, but that's how they're winning. Speaking of Congressman Burgett, let's go to District 2 here. Quick note about this. Obviously, he was uncontested, so Burgett's going to be back through there. But it's another showdown yet again between Hoyos and Burgett. Hoyos, look, it's not like Burgett's going to lose this, but I'm just telling you right now, don't sleep on Hoyos, all right? That lady is strong. She's dynamic. She has a message that resonates with some of these people in this district. She knows what she's talking about. I don't think Burgett's in any kind of trouble at all. It's not what I'm saying. All I am saying is like this lady has some tenacity about her, so just pay attention over there, all right? Now, let me just hit a few more, and then I want to bring our boys dig in on some national topics here. Jim Cooper did just fine as we're scrolling down through U.S. House District 5, looking at some other primary House districts, yada, yada, state Senate. There's a few things in state Senate that I wanted to bring up, but, it is what it is. Maybe Dolores' seat we can check out or some other stuff, whatever. But let me go down, Shine, to... Let's hit some of the House districts here as we're scrolling down. Hang on. There we go. So Michelle Carringer over there, House District number 13, 58.2% of the vote there, beating out Patty Bounds. Good showing for Michelle Carringer. That's one we've been keeping our eye on as well. Here's a big one. This one, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this one, man. District 18, Eddie Manis, Gina Oster. I'd be interested to see. I don't know if does this fall within the realm of a recount. I don't think it does. I don't know what the rules are over there. Somebody tell me. But Eddie Manis pulling this out with 50.7% of the vote. Gina Oster, again, Republican primary district, State House District 18. Gina Oster, 49.3% of the vote. That's literally Eddie Manis got 3,466 votes. Gina Oster got 3,367 votes. Right, man? I mean. Close stuff. It's just super, super close stuff. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that one. I really don't know what else to say about that one. I just looks like it's going to be Manis, right? That's why I think that's a perfect example of how to show, Shine. If anyone ever tells you that your vote doesn't count, or if you ever think about not getting vote out of there, dude, in a race like this, and it doesn't matter either way you go with this. If anybody ever tries to tell you that your vote just does not count, then I don't know. I don't know. But how do y'all feel out there in East Tennessee? I'm going to hit some comments here in a second. How do y'all feel out there in that district with Manis as opposed to Oster? Look, either way you go, you're going to get a good candidate from that. But, you know, what? It is what it is. Here's some other things that were a little bit surprising to me. Micah Van Huss lost his seat. Micah Van Huss lost his seat, and a few others lost their seat yesterday as well that I'm trying to find some of the stuff last night. But Van Huss is one that just really stood out to me. And Rick Tillis, Micah Van Huss and Rick Tillis, both incumbent Republicans, lost their seat by fairly large margins yesterday as well. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let me hit these comments real quick, and then we'll get on to our boy Zig as we're pulling up some other stuff here. Let's see. Eric said people from all over, not just Nashville. It was great talking about the Joe Jorgensen event. Now, Shirley said in Facebook, this is a little bit disconcerting when I saw this coming up, 80,000 mail-in ballots not counted. 80,000 mail-in ballots not counted. So I guess those still to be counted. Is that time cut off? I need to figure out something about that, you know?
It's not, it's probably the same thing we're dealing with from that New York story the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, the elections aren't even so close that you even have to count the absentee ballots, right? Because they're only like 2%, and if the election, if it can't be swayed with the absentee ballots, then they don't have to count them. Because of that court order in a few months ago, Grant, they got to count them.
Right.
But they're not used to counting all those pieces of paper, and then and then certifying the chain of custody and all those things. I don't know. It's probably just like logistical rules, you know, volunteers not knowing what to do, people not knowing what to do, because the state of Tennessee didn't plan on doing that. They were forced to do it by a court order.
Yeah, right.
The reason they weren't planning on doing it was because they thought they might not be able to, logistically.
Yeah.
Because they had already changed the voting system, you know, whatever. I'll let you keep going, but that's what I bet it is. I bet those 80,000 ballots not counted we'll get to it. We're trying to figure it out. And there might be more than 80,000.
And I know that the ambiguity with that kind of reporting here. I mean, look, we don't pretend to be a reporting site here. We give analysis and our opinions, and we just try and build community. That's what this real news thing has always been about. Real news, real friends, real community. That's what we're doing here. So I understand possible frustration with the ambiguity behind something like that. But look, man, there's intricacies in state law here we're going to have to figure out. And I would be interested to see, we'll keep you up to date as to any of those mail-in ballots that change into these results that we just looked through here. Jonathan said a second ago, that's how Manny got so many. I presume he was talking about when we're talking about pounding doors, hitting the pavement, doing that stuff.
Going to
Shoney's. He was in a lot of barns, man. Manny was in a lot of barns. I'll tell you that much. I saw him in barn after barn after barn all across the state. And I would predict that's not the last you're going to hear Dr. Manny either. Absolutely. Jeff just said in Facebook, Oster should have won in that district with Eddie Manis and Gina Oster. He said Oster should have won. She worked hard. She did. She worked very, very hard. Absolutely, she did. And you know, look, I think what that race probably came down to, my personal take on that is Manis probably just had better name recognition. I really think that's what it's about. I think he had better name recognition. I think he was coming hot off the takes of a very closely contested, close loss of a Knox City mayoral race. And I think a lot of people just knew the name. At least enough people. What was that? 99 more people knew his name than Oster's name, possibly. Maybe that's what that came down to. Who knows? But it is what it is. Hey, realnewsradio.live as our boy Zig's been sitting in the line. Appreciate you for hanging on during that local stuff, Zig. Sean, let me jump past this Drudge headline rundown. We might get back to that. I want to go straight into a YouTube video that I want to get my boy Zig's comments from about the NRA getting shut down in New York. Sean, if you could pull that video up here, it's under national story. It says NRA getting shut down, sort of. And there's a YouTube clip for the first thing linked there. Go ahead and play that clip. It'll set the stage here, and I'll give my commentary. Let's play this.
Showdown, New York State suing to break up the NRA. The state attorney general filing a lawsuit against the powerful gun rights lobbying group. Here's ABC senior national correspondent Terry Moran.
A stunning announcement. New York State Attorney General Letitia James declaring that the evidence of alleged wrongdoing at the NRA that her office has uncovered shows that the powerhouse gun rights group must be put out of business for good.
The NRA diverted millions and millions of dollars away from its charitable mission for personal use by senior leadership. We are seeking an order to dissolve the NRA in its entirety.
NRA CEO Wayne LaPierre stands accused in today's filings of misusing NRA charitable donations to support a lavish lifestyle, including numerous private jet flights for himself and his family, membership fees at golf clubs, and $500,000 worth of vacations in the Bahamas. 3 other current and former executives of the NRA were also named in the suit. The NRA has countersued the New York Attorney General, out with a blistering statement calling her lawsuit, quote, a premeditated attack on our organization and the Second Amendment. And Wayne LaPierre is out with his own statement saying, we're ready for the fight. Bring it on. Tom?
Terry, thank you for that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here.
So, Zig, I'm sure you heard that too. Here's the question I have. At the very end there, this guy, the commentary, or the statement from the NRA said this is a premeditated attack on our organization and the Second Amendment. So my analysis on this is going to be highly cynical. And I'm going to admit that ahead of time because I'm not exactly sure if everyone's going to agree with me on this. But I hear this story about some attorney in New York wanting to shut down the NRA. And I'm thinking, dude, so what, man? I mean, honestly, like, so what? And I don't mean to be that cynical with it. It's just, I think that's where news has me right now. And I think to myself a little bit, what has the NRA done recently for the Second Amendment? Honestly, what has the NRA done recently for the Second Amendment? How many things have come up recently? And let's be totally honest. How many things have come up recently from the Republican Party, no less, that have been quasi anti-Second Amendment, and the NRA just sort of sit back and just, let it happen. And I do mean bump stock bans, suppressor bans, red flag laws. Much of that, if not all 3 of that, coming from President Trump himself. Some of this conversation in the red flag law conversation talking about, let's sort of reverse this due process angle, take a bunch of guns first, and we'll worry about giving it back later if we deem you fit to have them. Literally the inverse of what due process should be, as opposed to if you're deemed unfit, then we'll take your guns. We'll take your guns first, and then you get those back if you prove yourself worthy. A lot of this conversation was coming from the Republican Party, and the NRA's kind of been sitting back on their laurels for, I don't know, at least the last year or two, or a couple of years, and maybe it just makes more political sense to do that, okay? I understand. But at the same time, if you're going to come at me, if the head of the NRA is going to come at me and say that this is some premeditated attack against the Second Amendment, I find that to be slightly disingenuous, because there's been several premeditated attacks against the Second Amendment over the past several years that this organization has done little to nothing about. My personal take. So when I see something like this coming up, I'm thinking, so is there actual corruption in the NRA? Does something need to actually be done about this? And do I even care, man? I don't know. I don't know. Somebody who's a member of the NRA, reach out to me right now. Let me know. Are they doing a lot for you? Are they doing a lot for the Second Amendment in your mind? Because in my mind, I see local groups like possibly the Tennessee Firearms Association or some other folks out there that are possibly doing more to fight for Second Amendment than anything the NRA may or may not be doing. Yeah. So, Zig, I don't know, buddy. Tell me if I'm wrong in this. I'm kind of throwing this Second Amendment conversation on you out of nowhere, buddy. But what do you think you're feeling about this? NRA's possibly getting shut down. They want to break up the entire organization in New York. Apparently, the attorney says they've been mishandling a bunch of funds, misappropriating, embezzlement. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. But the guy's saying it's a premeditated attack on Second Amendment. Where are you coming from?
Well, I don't think anyone has any evidence that it's likely to be shut down. I don't think any news article has proven that to be true. I don't think we've seen any substantive legal analysis to say that that is indeed the case. When you think about private companies, or private organizations, if they spend their donor money lavishly, guess what? That came from donors. Okay, they're not taking the money from taxpayers. It would be nice if attorneys in New York would do the same for their government. Okay, and instead of looking at private companies or private organizations, why not look at the government? I am 100% certain there's ample corruption in the state of New York. I have no doubt about that. But also, too, some people should not read the news so literally. This is not going to happen. And to me, it's part of a kind of like a backdoor campaign rally for a certain presidential candidate. Okay, it's to gin up his voters to get his voter base excited. That's cool, man. It's great. I'm happy that you support that guy. But as a lawyer, you shouldn't be using that position to gin up, some enthusiasm, where some polls indicate that a lot of folks are not that enthused about that Democrat candidate, especially after some of the ridiculous remarks he's been making the last few days.
And I'm telling you right now, this seems like a weird tangent to jump off of, but I do think it's makes sense as this conversation of defund the police goes forward. And I get it. What defund the police is actually about is a reallocation of funding, but taking it at its face value, there are certain people that are straight out advocating for full-on dismantling of police departments. As that conversation moves forward, you're going to find more and more and more pro-Second Amendment people. There's going to be, I mark my words, this is a prediction, mark the time right now, 9:30 on August 7th, 2020. Mr. Henry said there's going to be a large contingent of Democrats in the coming years that are going to be all of the sudden out of nowhere pro-Second Amendment supporting Democrats. It's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. So I'm not exactly sure, like Zig just said here.
I mean, hasn't it already happened?
Yeah.
I mean, right now, there's more people buying guns than there were during the Obama administration, which held all the previous records before. Mm-hmm. There's all these Democrats forming armed militias.
Yes.
For the purpose of, and I don't mean like the Antifa types. I mean like the people who march, like the people on the right, who it's not about intimidation or whatever. They just like to march and open carry and things like that. Stuff that only like constitutionalists, like not even all Republicans, only like the most hardcore people were doing 10 or 15 years ago. Democrats are doing that. It's already happened. I don't think you'll see any. I think you won't see the state of New York break down the NRA. I think the NRA is just going to become less relevant because there's going to be nothing to fight.
Right.
I don't think that Democrats could go after guns right now. I think lots of their people went out and bought guns over the past 6 months. And generally, 2A, like most people are becoming pro 2A. No matter what party, or even whether you're rural or urban. Like there's not like a young, old, rural, urban, east, west, middle, south, north. There's not like any of those demographic dividing lines anymore on 2A. It's really like a small percentage of people don't own guns and don't think other people should. I think most people are in the, I don't have a gun, but I don't care if anybody else does, and I'm thinking about getting one. Maybe I might get one. You know, but like they're in that space. And then like obviously a huge chunk of people, what is it, like 183 million people own guns, and most of them own more than one. Or something like that. Something ridiculous. It's something over 100 million people own guns in the United States. I probably jacked up that 183.
No,
that's probably that might be
like
too much, but I don't think it is. I think I've heard that before, but the point is, I think we're already there, 100%. I mean, how could you have watched them take Portland's courthouse under siege for 70 days and not like think about buying a gun, or see some of these stuff over the past couple weekends where the rioters, the communist militia, are showing up in residential neighborhoods, kicking in doors and beating up old women? Why wouldn't that make even the most liberal person at least think about buying a gun? And it's because they already have. They already have for years and years. I don't know. But I do know that the gun buying is higher now than it's been even since the Obama administration.
Yeah, even in Gallup, by the way, 43, to lend some credence to statistical validity to the statement you just made, Gallup as of 2019 indicated that 43% of households in America report living in a household where a gun is there. And apparently American civilians make up for 46% of the world total civilian held firearms. I think that's one of the main reasons why America's never been invaded, but what do I know, man?
Us in the Philippines, man. The Philippines has a huge chunk too.
Right.
Well, what I think is interesting about this story, though, is that it covers up a recent presidential gaffe by this other candidate who said that one minority community is more diverse than another. You know, I wouldn't be surprised that every time he makes a serious gaffe, that some other thing about the NRA comes out, or somebody suing somebody, or some other ridiculous thing to provide cover for the ridiculous statements that this gentleman is making.
Hey, Shine, by the way, being that Zig just brought that up, go ahead to the next national show notes section here. Biden, as I said, 2020 elections. It's the second story down from there. It's that YouTube link that says Joe Biden actually has the quote that he just made there with that YouTube link. Now, as Shine's pulling that YouTube video up here, let me hit some of these comments that we just came back from. Eric said, just a giant registry for going unders. That's one thing the NRA is. If they ever come for guns, they know where to look. Amy said, yep, we all agree that the NRA sold out and was a wussy years ago. None of us genuine people, right, none of us people are terribly upset. Jonathan said New York is going to lose. I think that's the general, sort of consensus with most people that's listening right now is that New York doesn't have a chance at all to actually do anything legitimate about this. It just seems to be some kind of political grandstanding. For whose benefit, I don't necessarily know. But Amy said, we do not know when states will go after the Clintons, though. Man, that's interesting, man. We don't know when the states will go after the Clintons, though.
That was going to be the other side of my analysis is like, man, if you don't think they can... If they couldn't take down the Clinton Foundation, they're not going to be able to take down the NRA.
That's true. That's true, man. That is absolutely true. All the stuff the Clinton Foundation has been tied to. I mean, if y'all haven't looked up some of the shady stuff that went on in Haiti with the Clinton Foundation, then do yourself a favor. Spend the weekend researching that. It's a read, I'll tell you that much. Kelly said the states are doing much better on their own than the NRA is nationally. Again, very valid. Absolutely valid. I've seen the Tennessee Firearms Association folks up at the legislature all the time when I was up there, lobbying on behalf of or against certain pieces of legislation that were coming through. Oddly enough, this isn't odd at all, actually, if you get into the intricacies of why, but the Tennessee Firearms Association was not exactly on board with Governor Lee's constitutional carry or whatever it was. It was a permitless carry, but they were essentially, I don't know what their argument was to the full extent, but I'll just say this, they didn't think it went far enough and it wasn't the right thing to do at the time. Give us actual constitutional carry, I assume is what they were arguing for, so they were trying to fight against that thing. Shine, you get that video pulled up here. So Zig just made a comment a second ago saying that this stuff with the NRA might be to distract away from what one of the candidates just said. And this is Joe Biden, pure and simple. Go ahead and play that video, Shine. It's just Joe Biden.
Way. What you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things. You go to Florida, you find a very different attitude about immigration in certain places than you do when you're in Arizona. So it's a very different, a very diverse community.
So that was Joe Biden in an...
That was what that commentator's about to say. First of all, can I say real quick, too, go check out the show notes for the YouTube video that I linked. The guy's analysis isn't fantastic, but any YouTube commentator, if that's a word, anybody that puts a YouTube clip together that starts with the clip instead of giving me 15 minutes of their nonsense and then playing the clip, I love you. I absolutely love it. And not just so I can steal your show prep. That's not what I'm saying here.
It's like when someone's trying to teach you how to cook something and they tell you the story about where the recipe came from first, and you're like, I don't care, man. Right. Don't care. Just tell me how to make the egg sandwich.
Just tell me how to make the egg sandwich.
Okay, but like what Joe Biden said there would not have been controversial if we didn't live in like Woketopia. Because like in a real sense, as far as like communities that are so large they could swing an election, African Americans in the United States are not as diverse in political thought and a political opinion as Latinos. That's a true statement. That's true.
You're talking as far as the voting bloc is concerned.
And far as how they feel about certain issues. Yes, that's the truth. Latinos are more diverse in... It's just true. It's 100% true that African Americans are more of a voting bloc that are more homogenous than Latinos. That's true. In my opinion, it's pretty true. Like Cubans vote different than people from, like people who are first, second generation Cuban immigrants usually vote Republican down there in Florida. And then people from like Mexico who are from northern Mexico, who live in California, vote a different way. They vote Democrat most of the time. And so like what I'm saying is like, that's not a super controversial statement. He just sucks at talking, and we live in Woketopia. Yes. And like, why? And like the other thing though is like, why would you bring it up? I guess Like, what's the point, like, of bringing that up? But he's right that African Americans are more of a homogenous group. There are people from, like, Somalia and different African countries, but they're not as large of a voting bloc. Like, it's not something to pay attention to, what the Sierra Leone vote would be, as opposed to, like, knowing what most Cubans, like people who were first, second generation Cubans. That makes more sense.
And honestly,
but he didn't use the word voting bloc.
That's true too. Okay, fair enough. Maybe I was just giving him a little extra credit there.
He said this is a more diverse voting bloc than another voting bloc. He didn't say that.
He did. You're right. He said community. He did.
And I think this statement, seen within the totality of the circumstances that Joe Biden has set up over the last couple of months here, is what makes it ultimately problematic for how he's making commentary on all this stuff. So he says, unlike the African American community, the Latino community is incredibly diverse. And had Joe Biden led with the African American community tends to vote in a monolith, the voting bloc itself is overwhelmingly, I'm talking 90+%, overwhelmingly votes for a particular party year in and year out. Had Joe Biden made that distinction and said that, but the Latino community does not necessarily vote overwhelmingly in the same sense.
Or different parts of the Latino community feel different about immigration, where most African Americans feel the same or something like that. Right. But that's not what he said.
And that's what a lot of the commentary is going to be today. And I think from the left and the right, we probably do ourselves. It would be healthy to recognize what Joe Biden was possibly trying to get at in that, is that Latino community not only votes differently, but feels differently, even across, political spectrums when they're polled, when Gallup does research surveys or any survey that's done on any given issue, regardless of the industry out there, on any given political issue, it does seem to be Latino community has more diverse feelings about that than, say, the African American community. But in the totality of what Joe Biden has presented over the past couple of months, it makes it feel very, I don't know, man, he's going to be painted as a racist. He's going to be straight up painted as a racist. That's what's going to happen. And I'll present it this way, okay? Go back to the Charlemagne the God interview. Charlemagne the God, he was interviewed and said, hey, man, it's something to the effect of Joe Biden said, if you don't know who you're voting for as a Democrat, then you ain't black. Joe Biden's words. Go back a little bit further. We can actually track Joe Biden to talking about some other stuff of saying Republicans want to put you back in chains. Go back a little bit further. Joe Biden is essentially the legislative architect of the civil asset forfeiture plan that we have right now. Go back a little bit further. During the Clinton years, Joe Biden had a lot to do as well with some of the criminal restrictions we have going on right now that had an absolutely sort of exponential increase in marginalized minorities' prison population of what's currently gone. The totality of how everything is seen right now, it's starting to think, people are starting to get the impression that a little bit of Joe Biden's sort of subversive inherent racism is creeping through the elderly cracks because it's breaking and fracturing, and the guy can't speak as well as he used to, so his real opinions are just coming out. Now, all that being said,
that's why I thought he meant like black people are a homogenous group in the way they vote, which has been historically true.
It has been.
Historically, it's true. Like 90%. Like 90% every time.
The larger issue is putting a particular demographic over a particular policy. Instead of pitching a policy to different groups of people and saying you've been affected by things like mass incarceration, for example, at a rate that's disproportionately higher than these other groups, instead it seems like he's putting the groups ahead of the policy and talking about different demographics first. I think as anybody who supports and believes in equality, that should raise a red flag.
Man, I think that's exactly what happened.
That's 100% an adult statement right there, Zig.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. Is the frustration of identity politics has led this narrative now where Biden or anybody else feels as if they must address the identity first and the policy second, which is an inherently racist way to address problems in this country. It always has been. It's part of the reason why I call it a self-refuting philosophy, because it will devolve onto itself. They'll start to eat their own. But aside from all that, it goes exactly to what Zig just said. If you address the demographic first, without what the policy is, feels like a very racist way to approach it, because the policy is going to affect all of us regardless of race. Now, at some point, if the policy, statistics or otherwise, want to prove that there's some type of systemic racism going on or a racial component to that, then let the data prove that out, or let the policy prove that out. Sorry, man, I interrupted you though, Zig, but go ahead, man. I think you're making a great point with that.
No, that's right, and it would be interesting to see if the gentleman even knows his own policy, because I've tried reading one of these things about what he's going to do for a specific demographic. Again, demographic first, policy second, and I tried reading it, and it was about, I'm going to say 10 to 20 pages long. Now I know that I can't recall that. Can he recall that? You know. Does he even know the policy, or is he just having a bunch of advisors write out a bunch of spiel? And if so, why? Why do politicians have to have advisors? Why can't they just roll out more on their own?
Honestly, I think that the presidential advisors, political advisors, you pay these people a lot of money. If y'all, I mean, everybody knows this. The paychecks that some of these consultants get is just, it's dumb, stupid. It's a little bit disgusting sometimes. I'm just waiting for the first politician to come out and just put a Facebook post of, here's all the bad stuff I've ever done before. Let's just go ahead and get this out in the open, right? Like I'm an open book type thing, like everybody's fallen short of the grace of God type thing. Okay, we're all inheriting the same original sin. I'm no better than you type thing. I just want to represent you in a servant mentality to be the person that can bring your message to DC, that type of stuff. Like Eminem in 8 Mile. Just tell people what you've done bad already. So then there's no need for a consultant, because consultants there are largely just to cover up your terrible deeds.
Well, and I would imagine that cronyism in government starts with cronyism in elections, where if you have all these consultants around you all the time and all these people hovering around you and 1,500 different handlers, okay, of course you are going to give them special deals, right?
Well, let me. We have 2 more topics to get to, but I want to cap the end of this conversation with, I just can't quite sometimes bring together the polling data that I'm seeing with some of these other stories. So we just went over some of Joe Biden's gaffes. That's not to say Trump doesn't have his own. I mean, we've been off the last 2 or 3 days. Go watch that interview that Axios did with Trump trading the graphs back and forth. It's a little embarrassing, okay? It's a little embarrassing for the rhetoric that was used, a little embarrassing for the confusion that would happen. Both sides are having some gaffes going on. But I take some Biden's gaffes, and I'm looking at this headline right here from Politico, and I'm telling you, I don't know what else to do with this, but here's the headline. Trump's campaign knocks on a million doors a week. Biden's knocks on zero. Biden's knocks on zero. And I suppose the Politico saying this is diverging responses to COVID-19 could be a wild card in November, especially in close races when it's coming down to the ballot. I'm saying Donald Trump's campaign, it says it's knocked on over 1 million doors in the past week alone. Joe Biden's campaign says it knocked on zero. So these are the two campaigns are reporting these numbers. Republican and Democrat parties, from presidential candidates on down, are taking polar opposite approaches from when it comes to door-to-door canvassing this fall. The competing bets on the value of face-to-face campaigning during a pandemic has no modern precedent, making it a potentially wild card in November, especially in close races. Biden and the Democratic National Committee are not sending volunteers or staffers to talk with voters at their home, and do not anticipate doing anything more than dropping off literature unless the crisis abates. The campaign of the Democratic National Committee think that they can compensate for the lack of in-person canvassing with phone calls, text. You cannot. You can't. You just can't right now. There is no compensating for a face-to-face interaction with a phone call or text. Frankly speaking, a lot of folks don't like the phone calls or texts. I can tell you from experience,
and you would think they'd prefer the phone calls or texts to being at your door. But yeah, like Grant said, from experience, I can tell you, I've been able to have a lot more persuasive conversations at the door. In fact, Zig, you can tell us. Mm-hmm. You've had more door experience than both of us during this season. Like, is what I'm saying true? Like, I feel like you get way more substantive conversations at the door than you do on phone or text.
No, that's 1,000% true. There's probably very few people that I could not convince about anything at a door. Okay.
There you go.
And then that person isn't really real. I know plenty of information. I know the policy. I know the things I'm talking about. But over the phone, man, I have this voice that sounds terrible. I'm sure they have volunteers who have voices who sound terrible. Good luck trying to call people, okay? Yeah. So yes, I know that is indeed factually true. And, I don't know what these folks are doing. I don't know if they want to win. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. But nevertheless, in terms of campaigning, not sound strategy.
And so Biden's not knocking on doors.
And you knew that they aren't going to, Grant, because of how they got to sell to their people that they're like COVID conscious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not going to knock on doors.
But see, that's what's interesting about it, though, Sean, is I feel like there is a COVIDly conscious way. COVIDly conscious, man.
I just coined that. Right? I made that up. COVID conscious.
COVID conscious.
Write it down.
Give it to Sean. Let me give you a hand for that. Hang on. Where's my reaction button? There we go. COVIDly conscious. Yes.
It's going to be the new social distance because I'm really tired of that stupid phrase. I'm just going to call it COVID conscious.
But there's a way to be COVID conscious and still do the door knocking. I mean, look at this headline right here. I mean, it's not the headline, but this paragraph from the same Politico article. Trump and Republican National Committee, in contrast, started deploying mask-wearing field staffers and volunteers to the streets in June. GOP quickly ramped up and now claims that more than $1 million, yada, yada, to go and say. I'm sure, look, there's ways that you could do this where if you need people to sign petitions, or if you want to meet them doorstep 6 feet off the doorstep with a mask on your face, knock the thing, let them come to their glass door, stand 6 feet away from you, have a conversation. I'll put it this way. If Democrats are fine accepting thousands, tens of thousands of individuals marching out the streets, and basically the conversation, as long as they're wearing masks, everything seems to be okay because it's outdoors, I don't necessarily see why a door knocking conversation could be all that different. And I'm telling you all this right now as a self-proclaimed hypochondriac who is the person that wears a mask everywhere. I keep like 3 bottles of hand sanitizer on me at all times. My hands have been perpetually dry because I do it way too much, man. I got a problem.
Y'all don't even know, man. Grant is scared. He is scared.
I got a problem, but I'm willing to admit my problem. I think is one of the biggest differences.
It's a good thing he's not running the Trump campaign right now.
Exactly. And I don't impose my problem on other people, which I think is the main problem that other people are having with a lot of this stuff going on right now. Once government imposes someone else's problem onto your problem, now all of a sudden you have a problem with somebody else's problem. And the problem has nothing to do with the original problem to start with. It has to do with this newly created problem. The problem of me putting my problem onto your problem. You know what I'm saying? It's all a problem.
No, I think the real insight here from my experience is that ordinary people really are not that concerned about the virus.
I'd say that's true with my experience
I've been
too.
To a lot of doors. I've talked to a lot of people, and I haven't talked to anybody that's really that paranoid about the virus. So what that indicates is that this is a media controlled phenomenon. That it's not coming from the actual people. It's coming top down, not bottom up.
I'll tell you something else that is coming from top down. The story I want to end with here today. So TikTok, your times are coming, buddy. I don't know why this story gets me giddy. It probably shouldn't. I just like TikTok's one of those things that never really quite
TikTok
understood.
sucks.
Yeah, right. And it's like
and I'd like to see it just kind of go back down the toilet where it came from.
Well, here's the story from CNN. Headline reads something to the extent that, Trump is now saying, here's a headline, Trump issues orders banning TikTok and WeChat. I don't even know what WeChat is, but Trump issues an executive order banning TikTok and WeChat from operating in 45 days if they're not sold by Chinese parent companies. So TikTok and WeChat are just done in 45 days if they're not sold by the parent companies, as opposed to Microsoft. So, it's a good way to throw some revenue into the American economy, right?
Well, no. If anybody understood what happens in China, this is the stuff that China would do. And China, to do business over there, a lot of times, from what I understand, unless I'm completely wrong and I didn't read what I read, that if you want to enter into the market, the government requires that you give them so much of a market share. Actually speaking, so this is retaliation, and folks who say that, well, this is the government interfering in the market. Nah, is it, or is it national defense? I would argue that it's national defense, and it's giving this other organization a taste of its own medicine without compromising the fact that this gentleman has to get reelected. For example, it would be more effective instead of doing this stuff through executive order, probably if some of it was done through the World Trade Organization, but the gentleman can't because he campaigned against globalism.
Interesting. That's an interesting little tag right there you just said, but he can't because he campaigned against globalism. Got a little conundrum, man.
Well, that's why the World Trade Organization hasn't been able to have the appellate judges, and the World Trade Organization typically rules in our favor about 90% of the time. but we can't use the institution because the gentleman campaigned against globalism. So that's why we have to use this other measure. But Americans should be, I don't know, at least perhaps happy about the fact that we are doing something that China has always done to us. It's a clear signal: do not tread on us.
Sean, where do you come with that? I know you're on usually on the side as well of the distinction between a free and a fair market, right? And doing as much as possible using the larger stick, if you will, of the American economy to institute a fair market. You know what I'm saying? China playing games, America playing somewhat similar games type thing. How does this strike you as okay? Trump's executive order? If you just joined us, by the way, Trump's pushing an executive order saying TikTok and WeChat no longer operating in America in 45 days unless they sell Chinese own parts, sell that to, I presume, what's going to be Microsoft. That's what the story is. Microsoft's going to buy out the operation rights. But go ahead, Sean.
Well, I feel like this is the nice way to handle it. I mean, if we found out, if you were running a country and you found out that a foreign country that is hostile to our way of life and us personally, they don't like us, and you found out they designed a product to be in everyone's homes and listen to them, what would you do? You just say that's the free market? That a foreign nation is a foreign government is spying on millions of Americans all the time? And then are willing to use that information as blackmail or something like that, and has shown willingness to do things like that? This is the kindest thing the U.S. government could do. If this were any other country, it probably would have been a lot more bombastic, in my opinion. And as far as the free and fair market thing, when you're dealing with China, you're dealing with everything is subsidized.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And not just through capital, but through slave labor. Everything is subsidized. And I don't know. I feel like they could be even meaner. The fact that they gave them days to figure it out and didn't just take the assets, hold them, and let a judge redistribute it. The fact that, and also too, I believe that we are in somewhat of a conflict with China at the moment. I don't believe we're in a Cold War. I believe that we are in some kind of conflict. I mean, that executive order that Trump signed that said if you're doing business with the communists, that this is the authority being used here, by the way, that if you're doing business with the Communist Party, that the U.S. government can seize your assets. In my opinion, that was an act of war.
Yeah.
If any country did that to us and said that the U.S. government, if you are doing business with them, we can seize your assets. If any other country did that, we would see that as an act of war.
Well, and let's be for real.
I don't think this is like a regular trade dispute kind of thing. I think this is a danger to the national infrastructure, and we are rectifying that. This exposes us to danger. And I think that this is the U.S. government trying to rectify that. So I think there's two levels of justification there.
I think you have a great point there, Sean. Let's be totally for real. This move of sort of this forced, if not slightly coerced buyout of TikTok is arguably the least controversial thing the Trump administration has done in this digital warfare going on with China to date. Let me just track a few of them for you so far. We all know what went on with the Huawei situation. I mean, dude, they chased that Huawei VP all the way through the Western coast, up through Canada, and then some. I mean, she eventually had to jump back home, and I don't know if they have extradition rights over there or whatever, but they've been chasing that girl for over a year. Trump did something, and I still don't quite understand exactly what he did, but Trump did something that forced every major technology company in America to just stop doing business with Huawei. Just done overnight. Google, this happened about a year and a half ago. Look this up.
It's
Google
COG things, man. It's continuity of government. It's
right.
You're exposing our national infrastructure to extreme danger. This is not allowed.
Mm-hmm. So Google, I mean, what I mean is I'm not sure what Trump said to these companies other than like, you won't be allowed to operate in America anymore unless you stop doing business with Huawei. Because Google overnight, again, this is a year, 2 years back or something, but Google overnight just straight told Huawei, we're not going to give you updates to Android anymore. 60 to 70% of the world's smartphone market uses Android as the operating system. That was to say that decimated the company it was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster for Huawei. They chased the VP all over the country. No more operations with Huawei. The ongoing behind the scenes battle with 5G build out of Huawei in multiple countries across the world. I mean, getting rid of banning TikTok, or at least the forced, slightly coerced buyout of TikTok is, like I said before, arguably the least controversial thing that's been done in this weird sort of cold digital war that's been going back and forth. But let me hit some Facebook comments, and I'll kick it to Zig for one kind of final comment to end the show here. Eric said in Facebook, TikTok equals weird dances and strange cat videos equals giddy plus awkward. Yeah, a little bit. Jessica said WeChat. That's the one I didn't know what it was. She said WeChat's an international app to call people all over the world. Interesting. Okay, like internet-based voice over IP or something like that. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Let's see here. Jessica said she used to buy a lot of meat, and other Chinese food cooks or managers ran a Chinese restaurant before COVID. I don't know whether this is true, but I stopped buying a bunch of sort of with fish that I could say. I try to eat a lot of fish now. I stopped buying a lot of fish that people would tell me would be sourced to Chinese markets or fish farms, because somebody told me this story that I did find some research to substantiate that apparently at these fish farms, they will put their pig farms, it's a little bit gross, but they'll put their pig farms on top of graded sections and their fish farms underneath the pigs. So when the pigs poop, the fish eat the pig poop as their food. And that's what it's like. You know what I'm saying?
And now we're all excited about eating fish, so, and pork.
In pork, that's right. And you just take the fish and feed it to the pig. Oh my gosh!
I buy Pacific fish. That's generally my rule on buying fish. But we live in a landlocked state, so no matter what kind of fish you're buying, I don't know. All meat, it pays to pay more. Generally speaking,
that's true, right?
If you want good fish, go to the good fish place.
Oh, man. Hey, and Jonathan just finished us out here by saying it's called a sanction. Yeah, a little bit. No, you were just saying a little bit, right? Hey, Zig, man, let me give the last word of the show here to you. We've been talking quite a bit here, buddy. Anything you want to say, anything you want to end on? TikTok story, stuff going on in Portland, Biden stuff, any of that stuff we didn't touch today?
No, I just hope going forward, people are on the lookout for different articles that we're doing. The one that I mentioned perhaps seemed like a little bit of a joke, but people ought to take it seriously. The grassroots between Kanye and Biden. Who's the greater grassroots candidate here? A gentleman who has the charm of a lifelong politician, okay, or somebody who's dropped out of college and has been successful despite that.
Honestly, I think it was the only reason why we had a comedic reaction to it is because it was a profound statement in a way. I think people are asking, that is true. That is so wildly true of Kanye West arguably being a more attractive candidate than to Joe Biden at this point, man. It's
just at least appealing on a personal level. Now maybe some people find like the hugs from behind. Maybe there's some kind of grassroots appeal to that. Maybe back in the 50s or 60s, that was considered kind of grassroots.
Stroking people's hair,
Maybe some people thought that. I don't know, but I think
lightly blowing on their neck, whatever.
I think people, if they want somebody that personifies that in terms of having to overcome hardship, is there a better candidate than Kanye West?
I gotta agree with that, dude. I can't disagree with that. Kanye West 2020.
One of my favorite, I was trying to find it right now, but one of my favorite memes I've seen circulate around Facebook. I don't know if it was Kelly or Eric that put it out there. Kelly and Eric, by the way, if you're not following some of their pages, go follow. And they about once, twice a week or something, they do these things where they put out these sort of like impromptu meme reviews, and they're always fantastic. Kelly always calls them meme drops, and then she posts all of them in the comment section. One of them I saw somewhere though had Joe Biden saying, "I'm so close to a VP candidate, I can almost smell her." Yeah, a little bit, right? Anyways, my name is Mr. Henry. David Sean Thompson and Zig. This is real news, by the way. Real friends is our friend Zig said. Real news, building real friends, real community. And in all sincerity, we say this a lot, but I want y'all to know, for real, we mean it when we say it. We love each and every one of y'all. This is a community we're trying to build. While we appreciate the likes and shares and care emojis and all that stuff, it helps us work the algorithm. It's not about the likes and shares. It's about getting to know y'all on a personal level. It's about living life with y'all. It's about making changes and impacting this community wherever you happen to be at. If it's Pennsylvania, all the way up there with our boy Zig or Jessica, if it's Eric with me and Eric here in Middle Tennessee, if it's all the great folks we have out in East Tennessee, or anybody else that you're listening to across the world or this nation, that's what we're doing, is building community, living life with each other, growing, progressing with one another as we hold each other accountable, and all these kind of great things, right? That's what it's about for us. That's what it's always been about for us. For that and everything else, signing off today. Love y'all. See you on Monday.